Okay, continuing on with part two. Adama the Atheist asks, what is your favorite comic? And then goes on to ask, currently reading or favorite of all time, both. I'm going to make just a big, long video about this, long ramble, because I can never pick just one. So I'm just going to talk about comics I love, and I'll do that in a separate video. So, not forgetting you, just procrastinating you a bit. Let's see, Sax Menshiro asked me, how old were you when you figured out you were an atheist, or were you always an atheist, and how did you arrive at the stance if you were raised a theist? It was a slow, gradual process for me. I was raised a theist. I went from being raised a fundamentalist, believing that the Bible was the inerrant Word of God, to once I started realizing that a lot of it didn't make much sense, thinking maybe it was the inspired Word of God, but human beings had just garbled it a bit, to thinking that maybe there was a God out there and human beings tried to understand Him and they got some things right and some things wrong, but the Bible had no more claim than any other religion, and what they got right, they just managed to get right, to thinking that, to moving on another step, to thinking that whatever they got right from dumb luck, or because they were actually able to empathically and logically think about things, but that for the most part, that religion and no others seem to have any actual claim to understanding a God. I was still inclined to think there was one, I just didn't think he was understandable by human beings, pretty much agnostic by that point. And then I finally got to the point where I realized that even the concept of God seems like a anthropomorphization, concept of a deity. I always mangle that word. But so I got to the point where I thought atheism seemed like a good default position until evidence presents itself. I still consider myself an agnostic atheist. I don't see anything pro either theist or deist, so until I do, I'm going with the atheism as a default position. So I'd have to say by the time I really got to where I was agnostic leaning towards deist was probably by my early 20s. So it was a slow, gradual process. I mean, I started it when I was in single digits, just realizing that some things didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, and it took me that long to really get to a point where I was just pretty much done with it. I might have been agnostic leaning towards atheist even by my late teens, but I mean, so moving on, Oogly by Dougleby, I'm horrible at reading things out loud, ask, do you have any things which you consider irrational but possible? I generally consider myself something of a rationalist, so I mean, I don't especially I consider everything at least remotely possible for the most part, unless it's just flat out logically inconsistent. But I generally don't believe in things I consider highly improbable. About the only thing I think I could claim to believe that I might consider irrational is I still have some optimism for humanity getting its crap together and making a better world, despite all the times they really fall flat on their face in that regard. So that's about the only thing I would consider an irrational belief on my part, and it's not really a very strong belief. I just still feel somewhat positive about it. So moving on, Mediosnatched, not sure how to pronounce that, ask, from one COH player, City of Heroes that is, to another, I have one main question, LOL Dark Armor, question mark. I think Dark Armor is actually a good set for scrappers. I mean, it's very specialized on minions, but it does what it does pretty well. I think you can do some pretty cool things with it. It's just you have to know what its strengths and weaknesses are. Not sure about it for a tank set, but I see a tank doing a lot with Dark Regeneration. It's got a couple very skippable powers, that's for sure, but that's just frees more room up in a build. So as long as other powers manage to hold up well. So I like Dark Armor. Let's see. And on a side and much less important note related to the real world, ethics, subjective, objective, or other, I'm inclined to think that some solid ethics and morals can be deduced through logic and empathy. I think empathy ultimately is a product of logic, although, I mean, not exclusively logic, but I think some solid empathy is. I think it's kind of an intuitive understanding of what logic can reveal. So I think you have something that you could possibly call objective morals, but I mean, we can only ever discover them and experience them subjectively, so whether you want to call it subjective or objective, you're kind of splitting hairs. I mean, I think that you can make a solid case for some intellectually deduced morals and ethics, but I don't think you can make an absolutist claim for it, and I generally don't bother. So if I managed to answer that question instead of just muddying it up further, I hope I did that. So I think that's going to wrap up this video. I think I'll try and get my comics ramble in tomorrow.